Welcome back to Hey Kentucky. The mask mandate took effect today at 5 p.m. To talk a little bit more about that, I'm so pleased to welcome in Senate President Robert Stivers. Thanks for joining us today, Mr. Senator.
Glad to, Mary Jo. Hope you're doing well.
Doing very well. All right. Andy Beshear announced yesterday we all have to wear masks when we're out in public, and businesses can, and should refuse to serve you if you are not wearing a mask. House Speaker David Osborne and Attorney General Daniel Cameron wrote a letter to the governor. Can you kind of tell me the impetus of that?
Some people are saying you're being critical of the governor and his policies. It's not the policies necessarily, it's the process. And what he consistently talks about Team Kentucky, but all of a sudden we get things dropped on us by press conference and have never heard or been in any way advised or consulted about anything he's getting ready to propose until we hear it from your colleagues in the press. And so that's why we wrote him the letter, because we feel that a lot of people don't necessarily have his home number, but they do mine. They do David Osborne's. And so we get called about what does this mean? Why are we being treated this way? Does this mean you have to wear a mask when you're outdoors, walking around, running in the park? So he has had some problems in court, and the consistencies of his policies have been questioned, and he's virtually lost every case. And we feel we could have helped him in a lot of these situations if we'd sat down and talked about it, but we have yet to have any real substantial conversations about what he continually calls Team Kentucky, but I guess we're not invited to be on the team.
With this COVID-19, we don't know where we're headed, but we have seen other states head in the wrong direction for sure. There are a couple dozen other states that have mask mandates as well. Will you just kind of clarify for me, are you in favor of everybody wearing a mask when they can, or not?
It depends on the circumstances, and it's never really been defined where you wear the mask. If we're outside in open air, is there necessity when you're with your family to wear a mask? In a facility, a 10,000 square foot facility, let's say a showroom where there's only 5 or 6 people, I can understand the potential of needing masks and individuals not being able to socially distance themselves. Then I can understand wearing a mask in those smaller facilities, like a waiting room for a doctor's office or a dentist's office. But there doesn't seem to be any real consistency nor rational basis for some of the issues that the governor's put forward. And again, it's not, I agree with you, and everybody will agree with you. And I've not been critical of what he's trying to do. It's the criticism is the process. So why don't you take input and do maybe an emergency reg, which he can institute, but then allow input and hearing on maybe you should change it or modify it, understand the dynamics of the various businesses or social event places. So it's not a question of whether you should or you shouldn't. It's the process for which he's using.
No-knock warrants. I know you're going to propose some legislation about that. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Yesterday, myself and several of the Senate members got together in a press conference to talk about no-knock search warrants. It is clear, and you see Gerald Neal, when you talk about the political spectrum, who is probably on the opposite side of that political spectrum. We've served together for over 20 years. John Schickel from Northern Kentucky, who's been around for about 12 years, all agreeing that there is no place in law enforcement for a no-knock search warrant. And various reasons, various ideas, the sanctity of your home, the protections within the Constitution, and that kind of goes back to our previous discussion. The Constitution is the Constitution. Those rights are protected whether we are in regular normal times or in pandemic times. So we see the sanctity of the home needing to be protected. Poor policing, bad policing, which doesn't mean that all police are bad. It's just a circumstance where there was bad policing that a young lady was killed. And if they had followed the practices of what I think Senator Neal supports, what John Schickel supports, what I'm proposing, this young lady would have, whatever she had done, had her day in court, due process, and justice would have prevailed instead of her being killed.
Senate President Robert Stivers, thank you so much for joining us on this Friday. We appreciate it.
Yes, ma'am, Mary Jo. Have a great weekend.
You do the same. Thank you. Much more Hey Kentucky
All right.
is next.